Welcome to episode 9 of Chambers Chatter. I'm Laura Chambers Babelis.
And I'm Shay Chambers Helms. Today we're super excited to introduce Connie Hip to the show. She's probably most well known for her vast impact within the community and specifically with leadership of Beaufort.
Hey Connie, how are you?
I'm fine. Hey, nice to see y'all. Thank you for having me.
We are super excited to have you here today. So tell us what brought your family to Beaufort.
I was a military dependent. My dad got transferred here in 1958. And so my brother, my sister, and my mom and I came with him. And we settled in.
You've been here since you were 6 years old, you said earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Wow, that's a long time.
Well, just a few years. Yeah.
So what was it like growing up from 6 years old into your teen years in Beaufort?
Quiet. Well, no, it wasn't actually. We made our own fun around here.
Yeah.
The funny part is I went to Port Royal Elementary School, so I didn't get to know the kids downtown and run those streets quite the same. But we had a good time taking care of Port Royal along that way. So I've watched it since it has grown over time too. And then as a teenager, there were still things we could enjoy around here and do and go to the beach and things like that. So we made our own fun.
Yeah.
I think you're the first person we've talked to that went to Port Royal.
Yeah,
tell us about the evolution of Port Royal and kind of seeing that from the beginning.
It's a lot different because when I was growing up, they had a lot of trailers and things there. That's where people lived. And over the years, it's evolved into they have homes now instead. So it didn't look so temporary. And Port Royal Elementary was a fun place to be. And with the docks down at the end, a lot of times some of the sailors that were on those docks would come use our playground and play soccer. So that's the first time I ever saw soccer, and I didn't even know what it was.
Oh, wow.
And over the years, though, the one thing that bothers me out there is they've cut down the bushes where we used to kiss the boys.
Oh, that is hysterical. Now, what street was that on?
Right on the main street there, but it was a nice school. And then they built Mossy Oaks Elementary, so I was in the first year there in 6th grade. So then I had to leave Port Royal. But it was a nice little village back then. And I'm not saying it's bad now, but it has definitely evolved into something much bigger and much nicer too. But the docks down there there were a lot of things you learned from what was shipped down there and that kind of thing too, because it was such a large natural harbor.
And the train was still working at that point in time too. Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
The train went all the way into Port Royal?
All the way into Port Royal and brought goods from other places to be shipped out on the ships.
Okay. So that was mainly a cargo port?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Was the Sands Beach still around, or was it around back then?
I don't remember the Sands Beach doing down there. It's evolved into something. So, we didn't have access to it if we did. But no, it was not the playground it is now.
It is quite fun. What was some of your favorite, like in your teenage years, some of your favorite things to do around Beaufort?
Oh, dear.
In your early 20s too.
Well, I did a lot of, I went to the beach, of course, because that was it. I learned to fish and things like that. I didn't go out in the water as much because it bothered my mother for me to do that. Since my sister, I think I told you before, my sister drowned at the beach here. So we weren't really allowed to do some of the water things everybody else did. But there was still some fun things to do around here. And I think that going downtown was fun because when you went downtown, you saw everybody you knew. And it's kind of funny sometimes now because I'll go downtown and I don't know a single person down there. And I guess y'all may not even too, but it's nice to go in some of the shops at least so that I know some of the constants with that. But that's good and bad. I like having other people here, but we didn't, we went to riding our bikes, and I tried out for several ball teams. I played church league basketball for a while and some things like that. And most of the time I was a much better spectator than I was an athlete, but that's okay too.
That's so funny. When did you start becoming heavily involved in the community?
I worked for the federal government. I started that And after I'd worked here for several years with the Department of Agriculture, they approached me about being promoted into a job that typically they were having trouble recruiting women for, being a supervisor. And so I moved to Charleston, and I came home on the weekends, and I started going and seeing things and touring historical sites and stuff, and did it for several years. And then when I got transferred back to Beaufort, it was like, okay, I'm learning about other places and I haven't learned about Beaufort. So I started trying a little harder to figure out what was going on here and how I could help. And early on, I tried to train to be a hotline volunteer, and I figured out that I couldn't deal with that. People going through trauma, just I felt like, oh no, what if I say the wrong thing to somebody? But there was a group of women here back in I'd say the late 70s, and we sat around in somebody's living room one evening, and actually several times after that, started talking about some of the organizations and things we needed in this community, like you know child abuse the KAPPA came out of that.
Wow.
And there was a organization that we had for a long time called Citizens Opposed to Domestic Abuse, and a few others like that. And I didn't get involved with all of it, but we sat around and said, what does this community need that we don't have? And what can some of us do to help?
That's remarkable. How many women were in this group?
I'd say probably a couple dozen of us. And it was just one of those things that we weren't the end all be all with everything, but out of a lot of that came some things. And so I started learning about different things that were out there and maybe how I could help with some of them. And I served on several boards and stuff like that over time. And with the domestic violence organization, one of my best friends was a military wife here that I'd gotten to know. And I rescued her from her husband, who beat her unconscious when she tried to call for help, and hit her and got her back to her mother. And so later, when they were talking about this kind of thing, I said, we need that kind of stuff around here. Somebody needs to be able to reach out somewhere. So I was only going to do it for about 2 years, and I served on that board for 11 years. But it was a cause I felt like I was lucky never happened to me. But, to think that somebody has to go through something like that, it just broke my heart. So that was kind of my cause for a long time.
Of course.
With it.
And a dear friend of yours,
Oh,
too.
yeah. And, it just, I called her mother, and she lived in North Carolina. And I said, I've got to get her up to you. She's not safe here. So that's how I got involved in that one. But there was some other fun things like KAPPA. And I mean, KAPPA's not all, yes, they're taking care of children and stuff. But years ago, there was a guy that I was taking a class at the technical college in the evenings, and he was going to do a haunted house and had the funds go to KAPPA. So we recruited some of us to be tour guides in there. And I was so afraid to go in a haunted house, but I'd do it if I knew where they were going to jump out and things. And people would stand in line for an hour to go through that thing. It was out in Burton now where the Culver is being built down.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
Back down that road. And so, it was really a lot of fun, and I felt good about something I could help with. And so we did it for several years, and it was so funny, though, because there was this one room, and you were supposed to kind of position people so they'd go to this one spot and be afraid. But the folks in there thought it was funny to scare me, too, because they knew I was scared. So I would get them all over here, and all of a sudden they'd jump out from over here. And later they were laughing at me and saying, "You're so funny. You're the one that screams louder than anyone else." So I said, "Okay, that's all part of the haunted house there." Anyway, so we did that for a few years, and then the house sold. So we moved on to the ghost tours. And I said, well, why not? And I was literally the first one to ever go out on a carriage with the ghost tours.
Wow.
And I did it for 28 years.
Oh my God.
And I loved it. And now I'm just not quite as stable to get up on the thing. So I drive around with people that want to learn how to do it in my car every year and try to teach people. And it's a lot of fun, and I love being able to do that instead. So, it's kind of quiet stuff you can do on the side.
The ghost tours are so instrumental for this community
they are.
And for KAPPA. I mean,
Oh,
truly.
it's been a great fundraiser and a lot of fun, and I love it. And the first time I had note cards, and I'd written some things along the way, so I'd remember the stories as we went around through the old point and everything. And we pulled out on the street, and I dropped them on the ground. They wouldn't let me get off the carriage. So after that, I said, well, if I make stuff up, it's a ghost tale. Why would anybody?
Who's gonna know?
I knew a little bit about things, so that's fun. And I told everybody, if you really want to know the history of that house, ask the driver. But I can tell you all the ghost stories, and it's lots of fun. And I really enjoyed that for a long time.
What's your favorite memory from that?
Oh, let's see. I think probably when we go down into the old point there, and like the Red House, the James Red House, and because they have the Belle of Beaufort out front there talking about things, and we used to tell that story, but I love it because you can set the people up to watch things, and when you know something's going to jump out from here. But one time my mother and some of her friends rode on my carriage, and so you're going, oh gosh, my mom's watching. Well, the carriage broke down in front of that house. And I told every ghost story I'd ever read anywhere or anything, because it took them about 20 or 30 minutes to get another carriage down. And my mother was just sitting there so proud because I was doing such a great job. And we got back to the parking lot afterwards, and there was a guy from Sun City, and he said, I always like hearing Connie tell the stories of my mama. I said, well, let me introduce you to my mother then, because she's proud of me.
Oh,
so I think that was my favorite thing, because I felt like I could at least fill the void where, and instead of going, oh goodness, it's the ghost story, and I don't know anymore for here, trying to do that. But people love it.
They do.
And I think it's a fun way to raise money for KAPPA, and it's a good cause.
And it always sells out. I mean, people love it.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not the walker. I like to ride the carriage. It's a lot easier to go along there. But people do so much for it. I mean, and we can engage so many people. I think it's great. And what a great cause. So why not?
Yeah.
So that's my favorite story, is breaking down with my mother on the carriage. So there.
That's amazing.
28 years is a long time. I mean, I can't even imagine the doors that's open for you just in itself.
Oh, yeah. Well, even my two stepdaughters, when they would come to visit with their teenage friends, after a while, they'd say, even though it's not that time of year, would you ride us around and tell us the story? So I'm pretty famous with them, too.
I might have to come get a ghost story from you.
So I'm like, I want to hear the story.
Well, I think it's a wonderful way to talk about our community that's safe, too.
Yeah.
How did you educate yourself to become such, to get so knowledgeable in all this, to teach others? What was your...
I think, like I said, I was shy when I was younger. And when I started moving up the ranks with the government, and I was a practiced female, and they were sure I couldn't do it. I proved them wrong. But I started pushing myself, and I joined Toastmasters and things like that, so that I would feel more comfortable talking in public. And it served me well. I don't know. There are some people that probably wish I would be a lot quieter. But at the same time, I thought, if you're going to be out there, Connie, you can't just say, I can't say anything. Somebody else is going to have to do it. So I started feeling more comfortable after a while with it because of that. So that I'd say I credit Toastmasters for some of that. I was in that for several years, and it made me feel like I could be a lot more spontaneous. And I think that's a lot of times what it takes.
I'm not familiar with what Toastmasters is.
Toastmasters is a club you can join, and we have an active one around here, I'm pretty sure. We started the one around here in 1990, and I'm under the impression it still goes. But you literally go to meetings and practice speaking.
Oh, okay.
And part of it is where you do these 1-minute table topic things, is what they call it. So that I might be in charge of that. And so I will say, please, stand up and speak for 1 minute on the benefits of aluminum foil, at which you sound that or something silly like that. And you get to where you're comfortable taking a breath and standing up and and saying a thought. So it's not something you necessarily would. Now, that's probably an outrageous example. I couldn't think of anything else right this minute. But at the same time, it makes you feel more comfortable. Oh my gosh, somebody called on me to talk. What am I supposed to say? So you get to where you're a lot more comfortable doing it. And then your fellow Toastmasters judge you on how you presented yourself. And then they have some books where you do this particular speech and on a subject, maybe talk about yourself or talk about your favorite sport or something like that. And then you have an evaluator that evaluates how you present yourself with that as well. And so you begin to use tools you didn't think you had. If I'm speaking to people, a lot of times I'll make sure that I've got a few props so that I feel more comfortable not saying, well, yeah, if I could show you this or this or that. And it made me feel a lot more comfortable in front of people because everybody in that club was doing the same thing. We were all trying to learn how to be better communicators. And you learn to use better words, or use the word of the day and that kind of thing. I thought it was very helpful, and a lot of us did. And it made me talk too much now. So there.
So how old were you when you finished doing the ghost tours, and what did you step into next? Because you have been involved in the community from day one.
How old was I when I stepped in? I don't know. Actually, I think I probably quit doing the actual active tours around COVID. Because they couldn't do it. And then after that, I had fallen and had to have a knee replaced, and it didn't make sense to get on the carriage. So I tried to do plan B. And so that way I would take people around and do it that way instead. So, but I was doing other things too, but that one just began to be something that it's okay to let the others do it instead. But I've been, well, I think the longest thing is the leadership program. Yes. And that was started by several people in Beaufort. The Brantley Harvey Jr., who was a local attorney, and he was also a lieutenant governor at one point. And there were several others around town that started it. And I was in the second year of the program, which was the class of 87. I know y'all weren't born then, but anyway. But it was, some of my friends had gone through the first year and they said, you need to do this. And I did it when they were still desperate for people, so I could interview, and they said, okay, we'll take you. And there was a volunteer running the program at the time, and she and her family moved away from Beaufort. And I had a real job with the federal government that I worked at for 33 years, and I wasn't through at that point. But I said, I kept my notes, surely I can help until you can get another person to do it. And I didn't really, I used the basic format they started with, of the monthly sessions and all that, and then started still doing it. And I started introducing them to people in this community that I had grown to respect, whether it was like your grandfather, Henry would speak to them, and others in the guys and ladies in the community, and different subjects. And so I just kept doing it. And all of a sudden I just finished my 38th year of running the program as a volunteer.
And the program's been open for how long?
40 years.
40 years. And you've been leading it for 38.
Right. But it's been, I love it. And the good news about it is we've had a lot of people interested. The bad news is we have more applicants than we have slots. And we try to get people to come back again if they didn't make it that year, because we try to get a good mixture of people that have been here a long time, people that are new to the area, all kinds of things with that. And we've graduated over 900 people in this program.
Wow.
And I like it because I see them out doing things. Yeah. And we tell them, we've got a mantra. We say, you're the theys. Quit saying they need to fix this, or they need to work on that, or they need to think of something different. It's time for you to be one of those. Yeah. And so they come back and tell me that quite often. You'll be so proud of me, Connie. I was a they last week.
Oh,
and that, and some of them are run for office, but that's not necessarily what you have to do. You just have to care.
Yeah.
And invest. And another fun thing is that I make them wear name tags.
I've seen them all over town.
my class didn't have them, but I said, we need that because when you're in this class and when you've got speakers, that way they know more about you and they know who you are and they'll remember you. And so anywhere they think I'm going to be, they're going to have those name tags on, especially whether it's a chamber function or whatever. And it's just, and so it's just a fun thing, but I see them doing things. And a lot of them even move away from this area and say, you'll be proud of me. I'm going through the class there, or I'm doing so-and-so because you did that. And I had, in fact, Stephen Murray that was mayor
totally.
here. Stephen went through the class in 2010 and then later ran for city council. And he said, it's all your fault. And when he ran for mayor, he said, you need to do a video for me because it's all your fault that I'm in this.
My God.
And I was so proud of him because, and others that have done that. And what's another fun thing is occasionally people meet each other and I can at least claim 2 weddings out of these.
Oh my gosh.
In fact, one of them is so funny. I walked her halfway down the aisle and handed her off to her daughter when they got married a few years ago because they said, if you hadn't said get to know her, you might enjoy getting to know each other. And when they several years later decided to get married, they maybe credited or blamed me.
Oh, I have chills. That's amazing,
That is so
Connie.
cool.
But, so that I get to see a lot of good things. And we've had generations go through this. I've had, like Larry Mark, his mother went through it.
Oh, wow.
He went through it first. His mother went through it. His wife went through it. And later his daughter went through it. And she was pregnant at the time. So I'm thinking one day we've got even a future one that way.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep doing it for a while because I like how I see it works in our community. So I'd say that's one of the things. But I've done other kinds of stuff.
We want to take a quick break to thank our sponsor, Watkins Mechanical.
Hey y'all, it's Josh with Watkins Mechanical. Warm weather is finally here and your system is working hard to keep you cool. Here are 3 quick tips to help. 1. Replace your air filters monthly. Restrictions cause your system to work harder and reduce your air quality. 2. Keep your outdoor unit clean. Remove any leaves, debris, or dirt for proper airflow. 3. Set your thermostat at a constant temperature. Programmable thermostats improve efficiency and help save you money. For quality service and lasting results, call Watkins Mechanical, trusted in the Lowcountry for over 25 years. Brian, whatever it takes.
I like what you're doing with collecting the stories, and that's an offshoot of that is back in 2011, we were celebrating the 300th birthday of Beaufort. And so, of course, I got sucked into that one as well. But we were collecting stories, and some of those people aren't even alive anymore. And we collected stories about their memories about growing up here, which was delightful to hear these things, and sometimes not even knowing about that thing till they told about it. So it was good. But, so I love Beaufort now, even though I really wanted to leave when I was younger. But the only thing is I would like to have more things for kids to do around here. So a lot of what used to be here, even some of the fun parks and things like that, and movie theater and stuff like that are no longer here. And I hate that. And I'm trying to be one of the days that makes that happen, but I haven't figured out exactly everything yet.
If you could bring one thing back, what would it be?
Oh, dear.
The tough one.
Well, you mean as far as the fun things?
For the children.
We used to have, I think a movie theater is one thing, because I know that you can go on TV and watch things and all like that. But at the movie theater, too, on Saturday mornings, they had the police movie club. And so when the kids would go see movies, and that was after I was older, but I helped with it for a while, and they would have policemen there. And so you got to feel more comfortable about the interaction with the law enforcement instead of saying, oh my God, they're here to arrest you or something like that. So I think that they did a lot of good relations in the community by that. So I think the police movie, the movie theater and the police movie club was a good thing, because I think kids, they don't get to know so much these days, and they're kind of out there on the streets having to do their own thing. And I think were good role models.
Yeah. I feel like from all the people that we've interviewed, they've all kind of had the same thought of it was much more of a close-knit community. Everyone was able to walk down the street and talk to each other. And when you have children, so you don't feel that way with your kids.
Yeah, it's can be a scary world to
Right.
raise
And
kids
you
in.
felt, even as an adult, I felt safe back then, which was important too. And I was telling y'all a story about that. I'll tell you about the safety of it because we had policemen walking the streets downtown too, even at night. And I was practicing one time before we had the waterfront park because I was going to be in a contest and I was practicing my what my talent was going to be. And I was
For Miss Beaufort, right?
right. And so I was on a dock behind one of the buildings off of Bay Street because I could project out to the water. And I could say my speech and be loud and nobody was going to hear me because at that time of night everybody was closed too. And around the corner comes a policeman. Connie, what are you doing down here? But at the same time, I was safe. I could go down there without feeling like someone was going. I'm not saying that someone's going to attack you the minute you go downtown. Now, I'm not saying that. But as a young adult, it was scary. It wasn't scary because I felt like they were looking out for us all the time. Of course, they all knew my dad too. So if you did something wrong, he was going to tell them before you got home anyway. So you had to be good. That was another thing about having small town. Another thing before we had the waterfront park is when we'd have things like Water Festival, they would close off Bay Street and you'd have bands downtown and stuff like that. All kinds of fun things down there. And while the waterfront park is fun, it just seemed a little more personal when we were all down on the, like when they have Night on the Town and they close it down. And that was for several different things. So that was fun. And we had the parking lot with the Bandshell down there. And that's where a lot of what went on, like with Water Festival and things like that, because we didn't have the park. Now, the park has been an excellent thing for our community, but at the same time sometimes, and we dress up to go to things for Water Festival when like the Commodore's Ball, the big dances and stuff like that. You wore long gowns, you wore these kind like that went outside because it was hot, but you made it a little bit more than flip-flops and shorts, and that was kind of fun too.
That is fun. And I've heard so much about the Bandshell. I so wish we still had that around.
Oh, that was in fact, that was where we were supposed to have the beauty contest, but it rained that night, so we went to USCB and did it instead.
Oh man.
But anyway, and USCB is an excellent thing here. Now, when I graduated from high school in 1969, you could go to USCB, but you could only go for 2 years. Then you had to go to main campus or somewhere else. That was as far as you could go. And I went there in the beginning because my dad said, if you want to go to college bad enough, you'll figure it out, which is why I was trying to get the scholarship too. And so I went there and then I got a job and I was doing it at night. And it took me 25 years to get my degree, unfortunately, because I couldn't go away to college. And later on, they started being able to grant 4-year degrees. But my diploma actually says I got it from USC Aiken, because they weren't allowed to give it here yet, but they taught the classes here.
Wow.
And with that. And so I just did a little bit as they kept offering more things. Yeah. And I have a business degree and I had a very good time with it. And then I got to be student speaker at graduation, and Larry Rowland was our keynote speaker that night. And it was so much fun because I admire him so much with his history and everything. And he was telling history of several of us graduates here and all that while we were doing it. And my parents were in the audience, and at the beginning I said, Dad, I really finished. Do you see that? My mom said he was so proud of you. Aww. So it was, but it was nice to have a school here if you couldn't go away, and to be able to go at night here and do it. Now it's good that there's the rest of the campus is grown and that kind of thing, but if for those of us who couldn't go away, right, that was it. And for those of us who had to pay for it ourselves, you had to do it a little at a time. Yeah. But I did enjoy it. So I like to brag on USCB too.
It's a good addition for Beaufort.
Yeah. Absolutely. And TCL had a lot of things as they grew that were helpful too, even in my career. one of the things I was a construction inspector now. And look at me, do I look like I know how to do
Really?
that kind of stuff? It was just because I made loans to
Yeah.
people to build and buy houses and repair them. And even though they trained you, I felt like they didn't do the best, that they could have done better. So I started taking construction classes at TCL at night. And so all these different things they offer there so that you can get a really good education and have a really good career. And I think both of those things are pluses for our community too. And they've grown to such a wonderful part of our community.
I was going to ask about your United Way experience. So that's another big organization that you're involved in. And can you tell us about that?
I have known about United Way over the years and just been a donor. And well, it sounds like I'm bragging, but it's just fact. I was honored to be the 2017 Woman of the Year when they chose that. And so I was, I wasn't aware of what they were doing with the Women United initiatives with United Way. And I felt like, okay, if you're going to do this, I at least need to know more about you. So ever since then, I've been on the committee, and we do such wonderful things in this community. And we're always trying to get more women, especially younger women, to know what's going on and maybe be engaged with it too. We do things like they do backpacks when school's getting ready to start, and we talk to the schools about what they might need and that kind of thing in them. And because there's a lot of kids that just don't have that, and a lot of parents that really try hard, but they can't get everything. And it started growing and growing and growing, and then there's always a bunch of women that will go by the United Way and stuff them with all the things that have been donated and that kind of thing. But we also did something a few years ago called Mimi's Closet, and we've gotten those in a lot of the elementary schools and a couple of the middle schools because teachers buy their supplies all the time. You know that. I've heard that from my friends and all, and so we make sure that they've got paper and pencils and maybe school uniforms in some cases, because some kids don't have that either. And even some feminine supplies for some of the middle schools. And the teachers in the schools just love it because they finally have, and we try to keep it stocked and try to engage with others in the community to donate towards it. And not necessarily even money. You can bring some books by the United Way or some paper and things like that, because all of that helps these kids learn better. And I think that's that's one of the reasons I think it's great to keep going with it. We also give some scholarships, and that's been slowly but surely growing because you've got to raise money to do that. Most of the scholarships are $1,000, but you have to go to TCL or USC Beaufort. And those are the only two options. And they say non-traditional female students. Now, non-traditional doesn't mean something off the wall. It means maybe you've got a family and you're working and you're trying to go to school at night to finish your degree. Or maybe because in your job, if you can get some credits in something, you can advance in your job. And those things are important, but you can't always do it when you're trying to run a family too. And we've given out, I checked yesterday, as a matter of fact, $24,500 in scholarships so far. So that's not a tremendous amount, but that's about 6 or 7 each year.
That's a lot.
And and these ladies they have to have letters of reference. And so you hear these wonderful things about them from their professors and maybe from their employers and people in the community about them. And you go, gosh, I wish we could give you 3 times this amount or whatever with it. And some of that money can be used for a little bit more of non-traditional things. Maybe you can cover the books and tuition, but your car broke down because you need a tire, and maybe we can help you with that also, because some funds that they have available for that, and maybe that can get you back and forth to school too, which are things you don't think about. And I remember when I was going to school at night, I didn't have children and all that, so I just sacrificed and figured out how to make it work. But I was going to school with people that had families, and you see sometimes, okay, I'm not taking a class this semester because I can't make everything work.
Right.
And so I just love that Women United do this, and over time time, we've been able to grant more and more. And that's one of the committees I serve on too with that. And we have an event every year called the Power of the Purse.
Yes.
And we have some silent auction things, as most do, and all like that. But and typically with that, that's when they honor the Woman of the Year too. And people come, and when they're donating for that kind of stuff, that's where the money's going. And I think it's good now. And they had for a while in COVID. COVID caused a lot of things to slow down. But we've actually been in discussion over the last couple of months about starting it again. Maybe about once a quarter, we'd have a little information session, and a lot of times we'd be able to use a room at TCL, and we just invite women to come at lunch and come hear this speaker that might make you feel a little better about yourself today or something like that. And so we're hoping to do that, because you don't have to buy big tickets for something like that. You show up. And so some people might be more involved or more engaged or more happy to have learned about these things because of that. And it makes you spread out the goodness with that. So I like that.
As someone who has done so much for our community, and we've got young people that are wanting to start, where would you suggest that they start?
I operate on the concept you don't have to know everything, you just have to know who does.
Right.
So if there are things out there like that, like these Women United workshops and that kind of thing, but not everybody knows where to go to even get that. So I don't know, because I've struggled with it myself. And sometimes I drag a bunch of them with me and say, come here, and maybe I might have found some tickets, something like that with it. But I think you could also reach out like to United Way, because there are people in there. I know one especially, Christy Turner. Christy knows all kinds of stuff. And if you know somebody that needs something, a lot of times, and I can't figure out where to send them, I'll even reach out to Christy. But a lot of times they may have some initiatives going on, and you might find, okay, I didn't even know this particular organization existed, but I love doing those kind of things.
Right.
And so maybe I can help in some way. It's just like, I didn't realize that Habitat had a wood shop, and then you find that they do. And there's especially a lot of guys that love working with wood, and then they'll make things, and then they can give them to people along the way, or what, so there's a lot of different things like that you just kind of learn. And some of that I've learned from United Way. So I think that's one way. There's other organizations in town, but sometimes you got to know what they do before, it's do I do this or do that?
So it's a little overwhelming for younger people that don't know.
And I couldn't agree more. And that and actually, there's a leadership program in the schools now.
Oh.
And their Clemson Extension Service runs it. Okay. And they just started it a few years ago. And I think it's great, because they're taking the kids out and showing them some of those things. And one of the things they do is volunteer somewhere. So I think that's a good way. Yeah. And I also encourage that as part of one of the programs we do. One of the monthly programs we do with the leadership program is I make them all volunteer somewhere different. And I give them a list of different kinds of things. They have to volunteer at least 2 hours, find out what they do, who they serve, how they're funded, and how people could be involved.
Oh, that's really neat.
So if I've got 32 in the class, they all give about a 5 or 7 minute report on their organization, and suddenly you've heard about 32 different things, and maybe it's something you hadn't realized was out there that maybe you could be helping with. So I think there's things like that help. Now, I'm not trying to promote so much my program, but those people also are going out in the community then and learning. Or if you see like a second helpings truck, reach out and figure out what they do. You might want to help with something like that. But I agree with you. There's that one step there. But that's why I've tried to help a little bit in getting information out to that and finding that, because when I was young, I didn't know. Yeah. And when I was young, some of that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that, I think what I've tried to do is when you're talking to somebody and you say, oh, you're new to Beaufort, what do you like to do? I like to do so-and-so. And say, well, we have an organization here you might want to be part of. And and it's not that you got to join everything to do it.
Right.
But, just identify what you want and then go in there and say, maybe I can help. Or maybe if you see that there's thrift shops in town, maybe stop and say, what does this organization support? And maybe I could help with something. And you might start out by helping them sort things on Saturday morning, but later on you might find that there's a ghost tour you could help with it, different things like that. Even with the ghost tours, for example, you don't have to tell stories, especially if you think, gosh, I couldn't do that. You could be security, you could help with reservations, you could help get the kids painted up. We have a lot of Interact kids that'll be characters out on the street and things like that. So sometimes you can, go that way and at least get started and say, what do you do here? And what does your organization do? And is there a place for me in it?
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to go in and ask. And I know that's hard to do, but, because everybody might want you to join this club or join that club or whatever. There's several Rotaries in town and they used to, lots of people would do that, but I don't want to go to a meeting every week. I mean, I'm not saying Rotary does a lot of great things. I'm not saying that, but I tried to figure out other ways to find out what was going on.
And some people can't be committed every week. Some people just once a month.
Exactly. So. Or maybe I can help when you have an event. Yeah. I've helped with things like Taste of Beaufort, and I wasn't part of any of their things. Years ago, I took up tickets a couple of years just because I figured that was something easy. Right. And I didn't have to know anything about anything to do that. But sometimes if it's something you're enjoying, maybe there's a way to help with that too. So I think you just sometimes just kind of, fake it. Go in and say, hey, what have you got? And what can I do for it? Because I think if all of us do a little, it helps a lot. Yeah. And I think that once you find something you really like, maybe you'll share it with 2 others and suddenly we've got 3 volunteers.
The domino effect.
Right. And so I think that's an important part of it. And then maybe people like me cannot do so. No, no, I love it. I love it. But, there's a point when you have to slow down a little bit. But it doesn't mean that the message is still not out there.
Absolutely. Well, Connie, I know on behalf of us and really, truly the whole town of Beaufort, thank you for all that you do.
You have been such an inspiration. I want to get more involved in the community just from talking to you for 30 minutes. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, call me then and I'll figure out what I can do. No, y'all are doing some great things by sharing these stories too. And I absolutely love that. And I think it's important because we got to capture some of those people before they're not, this doesn't sound negative. We got to capture them before they're not here anymore to share their stories.
Absolutely.
And there's too many wonderful stories.
There
so
are.
thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, Connie.
Appreciate you being here.